Hello, and welcome everyone back to Blockchain Week. Today's speaker, we have Michael Gu from CEO of Boxmining, and he's going to be speaking about the opportunities and pitfalls in GameFi development and why some projects succeed and others fall into obscurity. This session is proudly brought to you by CoinSpot. Over to you, Michael.
All right, thank you, Marilee, for the awesome introduction. Obviously, I'm going to have a really great time with you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed your lunch. And I would like to say, of course, starting off, it would be great to be in Australia, but unfortunately, I'm currently in Hong Kong and it's quite locked down right now. So hopefully next year I can join you guys. And I really want to see how the whole space is developing in Australia. So hopefully next year I'll be there to see what it's like. So without further ado, I'll give a quick presentation. So we're talking about gaming space and GameFi, which is one of my favorite topics. And let me just go start my screen share here for 1 second and load up everything. So let's start with just some quick talks about this. So what are the objectives of talking to you guys here? And I spent some time thinking about this slide because I did want to kind of share some meaningful information with you guys about the whole space. And one of the reasons why I wanted to share something a little bit deeper into this topic is because I've had previous experience both in the gaming space as a gold farmer. So if you guys you can sell digital currencies, and I've had the fortunate experience of selling quite some digital currencies a while back. And then, of course, I've done game development prior to my whole journey into blockchain. I've actually been quite deep into development both in Ares Games, and we released games in Hong Kong and in China. And also we adapted games as well. We did game localization. So this is where we took some really successful titles, say in mainland China, and we adapted that and released that in the Hong Kong, Taiwan marketplace. And we also offered the game developers some of our experience as well as game developers in Hong Kong. We had some intimate knowledge of what Hong Kong gamers preferred and what systems that kind of work well in the Hong Kong space and what systems didn't really work well. It wasn't very localized very well. So we suggested some changes that would happen to these games and kind of move that forward. So that was kind of a lot of my experience prior to coming into blockchain. And then afterwards, after coming into the blockchain space, I started my own YouTube channel talking about cryptocurrencies and, of course, my own investment fund investing in a lot of different projects. So, I looked at my experience and I said, what can I offer you guys and what can I kind of share in terms of the gaming space? Because gaming is a very mature space and it's been around for a long period of time, and there's a lot of trends that kind of catch on. Some do catch on, some don't. And there's a lot of good sharing in this space, like kind of retrospective thoughts and kind of experiences that people share to kind of grow the space overall. So this, in many essences, I want to kind of replicate a lot of the experiences and the sharing experiences I had when I first joined the gaming industry, and share a lot of the kind of the successes and failures in GameFi. Which is why, with the lengthy title, what we're talking about in GameFi and why some projects succeed and why some fall into obscurity. So starting off, I want to just give an opinion, why GameFi is super hot, balanced opinion up there. Then we're going to look into some particular case studies. So we're going to look at Gods Unchained, we have Cheese Wizards, we have Axie Infinity, obviously, the flagship game in the space right now. And then we are going to dive into some, deep into game design and some features. Because I feel like at the end of the day, it's really about the game design. If you have a good game and it's really designed around what we have, and it makes use of this kind of ability to use blockchain to track items, to trade items, to very rapidly trade items too, that's where we can grow. If the game design is poor, you don't offer a strong foundation, and in many cases, games don't succeed in that case and have to go back to drawing board and go again. So in many cases, I want to just share some traits with you guys. So we're going to do some deep diving into game design. Now, let's start off with a lot of pitches that I get. So, the good and bad thing about being in the crypto YouTube space is a lot of people come to you and GameFi, especially I see a lot of projects about GameFi and they bring out these big numbers say, for example, how many gamers there are in this world. It's in the billions, right? It's a massive, massive audience, massive opportunity, and everyone can do the math, right? They can say, oh yes, if people, gamers come in, if everyone gives you $1 and you have 1 billion gamers, so you got $1 billion, right? So this is what I get pitched a lot, and I'm sure you guys have heard the pitches too a lot in the space. It is exciting, but of course there is one drawback, which is that gamers are extremely picky. So this is a screenshot of one recently released game. This is the flagship racing game released by Sony for the PlayStation system, GT Gran Turismo 7. And you can see here by user score, they got a 2, right? So even though the critics are saying this is 87, it's exciting, 87. It seems like a good game, good graphics, really great races, but the gamers are just review bombing it. They're giving an average score of 2. Gamers are extremely angry. And when it comes to money, this is when gamers get very angry. And this is one of the limitations. I think something that people who are kind of interested in gaming and GameFi, they need to understand that gamers, when it comes to money, right? When you add, say, when you add microtransactions to the game that people paid $60 or $70 for, gamers tend to get really upset because they feel like they paid for the game, but if they want to continue paying, or they need to buy additional items, skins, or etc., then they get a little bit upset. So this is one of the comments, this is a 0 rating, they're just saying, hey, hello, this game has a ruined economy. And they're quite bitter about this. And this can spread very quickly within the gamer community, and it will lead to a pretty poor launch and poor results and poor user retention. So this comes into mind because a lot of crypto games, they offer a lot of NFT trading, which are purchased, right? So gamers tend to expect to pay money for NFTs or for kind of the transactions in games, which is why this is extremely important for people developing in the crypto gaming space to be aware of, is that this audience is actually quite hard to engage in. So that's the question right now. How do we make games profitable and fun? And in the next session, I'm going to just take a look at a few games that were released. And in particular, I want to focus on games that have been developed for some time. So I'll take a first look at Gods Unchained. So they raised close to, let's see, it was 2019 here. This is the article that came out. But they finished the raise and they actually made a very, very beautiful game. They have some amazing artwork. They were well founded in the Series A, $15 million. However, they really failed to gain kind of massive mainstream. They kind of, if we're talking about gaming and engaging billions of players, they kind of fail to get billions. Right now, if according to these metrics right now from CoinRadar, that's really, I actually fetched this week. They currently have around 2,800 daily active users and 20,000 monthly active users, which is, in the gaming space, if we're trying to reach billions, 2,800 players per day is not a lot. And if you look at the game itself as well, it looks beautiful. Look at it. They have very amazing artwork done by some of the top artists here. And if you actually play the game, it runs very, very well. Everything that the game, in terms of the cards, the animations, the battle system, it runs extremely well. So then we can ask the question, why didn't Gods Unchained take off? And this is something that I kind of addressed all the way back in 2019 when we took a look at this game. They were very keen to ask me to share my channel, but there was a few key problems that I feel like came from deep in within the design principle. So yet again, I want to share some with you. It's not try to bash people, but it's more of a kind of a retrospective. And here are some pitfalls they fell into, but hopefully we can avoid them in future game design. So first and foremost is that the gameplay is very similar to Hearthstone. So Hearthstone is one of the top games made by Blizzard in the kind of the strategy battle card game space. And because of that similarity, a lot of fans even pointed to similar kind of stats for individual cards. So even some individual cards felt mechanically similar to Hearthstone. And this is extremely dangerous because when players play the game, they'll naturally compare to the top competitor in that space. So players, because they can play a more polished experience, even if your game looks very similar and kind of has very good graphics, because players can play and compare to the kind of the dominating game in this space. Hearthstone has 3 million monthly active users, actually 3.8 million, almost 4 million monthly active users as of January this year. So they're going to compare to the top game that they know about, and it's inevitable they're going to start to draw comparisons, and it's very hard to kind of dominate in that space if there's a big competitor there already. The other kind of issue that I wanted to point out is that by having AAA graphics, and I've seen this pitched a lot by a lot of gaming companies trying to break into the GameFi space. We have amazing graphics, other games don't, but our game has some of the best graphics. But one of the pitfalls of having amazing graphics is that it's extremely hard to develop and innovate on this type of game. So you can see that happening in the AAA gaming space already. A lot of games like Call of Duty, the graphics, the sound design, everything is amazing. But in terms of the game design, they're not really innovating because they're spending most of the time on big budget, getting those big budget soundtracks or big budget composers, and then of course the game, the 3D artists. It's extremely expensive and they don't want to take risks. So when it comes to fast iteration, it actually is kind of easier to make games that don't look as good, which is why indie games I actually feel like have an advantage in the space. If you're creating anything with anything, if you're trying to create anything novel and innovate, it's much easier to do so with kind of just simple 2D graphics without the insane 3D space. And I just want to give a kind of comparison as well. If you talk about Hearthstone, and originally they developed the game in Flash. If you actually listen to a lot of their initial talks, when they developed and concepted this game, they did it in a 2D fashion. They did it in, they told the developers to just write it in Flash, just do it as simple as possible. They actually used card cutouts to represent a lot of the aspects. So it actually took roughly 6 years of game development for Hearthstone to be developed and to be iterated, so it's in a fun and playable state. And I kind of see that this is something that we also need in the GameFi scene, where we do need kind of fast prototyping, fast iterations, and being able to deal with creating new gameplay types for new people, so they can get engaged, so they won't compare the games that are coming out in the space with existing titles that are kind of dominating. So the last point I do want to say here is that, just point this out, is that the gameplay wasn't developed for heavy trading. This is actually very interesting because if you look at a lot of the promotional material for Gods Unchained, they're talking about adapting Magic the Gathering, a trading card game, and kind of also challenging Hearthstone. Hearthstone intentionally did not allow trading. It was based on Magic the Gathering, also trading card game. People are collecting cards, and logically speaking, that would make sense for blockchain games to be like this. But Hearthstone didn't really allow trading, and this is intentional because they also learned from a lot of experiences in Diablo 3. If you look at a lot of the talks that Blizzard had, they kind of realized that when Blizzard added auction houses, real money auction houses to games, it didn't work out. And one of the reasons why is that for players, players want to have fun. And if you make trading a core part of the game and the trading is not very detailed or nuanced, it kind of ruins the fun. And the running joke with Diablo was that instead of being heroic and hunting down monsters, killing epic bosses in Diablo, a lot of players were just going straight to the auction house. This was the easiest way to grow their characters, and also the easiest way to become more powerful. So Diablo kind of solved this, and Blizzard kind of solved this in Diablo 3 by just saying, good riddance to the auction house. Sorry, no more trading. And I kind of see this kind of analogy happening with Hearthstone. Like Hearthstone was not really designed, that kind of gameplay type was not really designed for trading from the get-go. So in many cases, bringing NFT trading and a fast, very readily accessible auction house work to the detriment of Gods Unchained. So in many cases, I would, if there's game developers coming to me, I would encourage them to develop a game that's, focused around trading and making the trading kind of more nuanced. Next, I actually want to bring up this game, which is kind of interesting. This is Cheese Wizards, and I think this game is phenomenal in terms of their art. It's extremely funny. It's about these Cheese Wizards are battling to win this tournament, and on top of that, there is a 100K prize, $100,000 prize to win Cheese Wizards. And the best part of it all is it's developed by Dapper Labs, the creators of the famous CryptoKitties. And again, I think this game was a game that, they came out and designed this with the best intentions. They kind of saw esports was popping. They really want to tap into the esports game scene, and it's extremely easy to run tournaments on the blockchain. But however, there is a problem in the sense that if you want to run tournaments, if you rush tournaments too early, I would say if you rush tournaments and esports too early without a very well-established game that is very well balanced, it might even take, like, say, 2 or 3 years to balance up a kind of a competitive game to be ready for esports. Because when it comes to sports, players who are playing, they want to make sure that their decisions matter, that they have strategies and counter strategies that they can play. So when they are playing something that they feel like they can win, and their decisions on that spot matters. This is actually extremely hard to implement on a lot of kind of games that feature collectibles and trading cards, because a lot of times if you're collecting, you want to have the best set, right? So a lot of times it's very easy for the outcome of a battle to be determined before the battle even begins if this player has a better deck or a better strategy or overall better in the current meta. So I think it's tempting. I've seen a lot of companies come to me and say, look, we're going to be the next esports revolution. And it's very easy to throw these words out, but in practice, this is actually something that would take years to perfect. And in many cases, you'll meet successes and failures along the way. Some games lend themselves good and well to esports, some don't. And unfortunately, Cheese Wizards was an experiment that wasn't very successful because they kind of realized that it wasn't able to kind of sustain that huge player community needed to make esports successful. Now, lastly, last but not least, Axie Infinity. And I think this is a game where they played at their strengths. So if you take a look at Axie, they didn't have fancy graphics. It was actually made by a very small indie team. And it's very bright, it's very exciting, but in many senses, it didn't really, they didn't throw a massive budget on the overall kind of game itself. They just made a very polished game. And if you do play Axie, I do want to say that there is a few features that are extremely interesting, and I want to point out from a game design point of view. So Axie, when you play Axie, you're battling these Axies against either other players or other monsters. And you have a selection of cards. So it's a turn-based game that you kind of bring your pets to. But it's a little bit more nuanced than that. And something that's actually very interesting is that when it comes to Axies, not only do the cards deal damage, but they also provide a one-turn defense. And this is extremely powerful tool for the game designer because this allows players to kind of outplay each other. There could be turns that you take where you stack up a massive defense on an Axie that you think a player is going to attack, and it's going to negate all of the damage that this player, the opponent, is going to do. But at the same time, if your opponent knows this, they can just wait out that turn. And this gives a lot of counterplay. So it makes not only deciding which Axies are good important, not just breeding or finding the best Axie. And the outcome of the battle is decided by player skill. And it gave the game designers a lot of ability to tune the game to kind of tweak these numbers in such a way that there is a lot more ability to outplay each other. And you constantly see that in the current kind of seasons that are going on in Axie Infinity, where they kind of tweak the figures a little bit, they tweak the gameplay a little bit, and this allows for certain combinations to shine and for players to kind of experiment with different combinations during that particular season and kind of play with the game mechanics. So I think this was a very neat touch. It's a very small touch, but being able to have that one-turn defense actually made this game extremely easy to kind of change. So I wrote a slide up about why it's good, but I kind of wanted to focus on that particular gameplay element as an example of kind of the game design choices that they made, that they planned well ahead of time. So it allowed them to kind of tune the game at this current point and continuously made it fun. So I definitely want to encourage people to ask, like, if you guys are interested in games, to ask about what kind of design features they have and what sort of prototypes they have. And that's and it's going to reveal themselves very early. The good game designers are going to reveal themselves very early because they're going to talk about systems that can be either modified, tuned to continuously make this game interesting and exciting. I also want to just point out one thing about Axie Infinity as well, which is that they also innovated on established crypto gameplay. So this is very interesting. So they kind of took elements from crypto kitties. They took elements from blockchain cuties. They took elements from ether bots. So these are all crypto native games, and they kind of innovated upon how breeding works. Oh, you need the small smooth luck potion, the SLP, to breed. There's a limitation to how the production of SLP. They added kind of these small elements in that innovated on the breeding systems that are already existing. And I want to contrast this. If you're innovating on an existing crypto game, I think that's largely regarded as something that can be successful. But if you're just making a minor innovation on an existing AAA game, it's actually going to be a lot harder because the AAA game is there. You're kind of facing much stiffer competition, and you kind of also kind of trying to add the crypto element there. So that will be the challenge. But if you're kind of modifying a crypto native game, the challenge is a lot easier. You can micro innovate, and the crypto community is gonna love you for it. But rather, if you're adding just crypto elements to an existing AAA game that doesn't have kind of the trading infrastructure there, the trading infrastructure design, there are breeding mechanics there, it's gonna be a lot harder for a game to succeed. You're gonna be met with a harsh criticism and possibly kind of review bombs that could be possible. So I know like this talk is a little bit short, but those are some kind of the points I can share with you guys here in terms of game design. In terms of kind of what's next for me, so I'm investing heavily in the space, and I'm looking at games like Meta Gods. They're yet again, it's kind of following my kind of ideas where they have very simple kind of retro designs. They can fast iterate and design games, and I've been speaking to the team a lot about how to improve the game and how to kind of make it more trading focused and kind of let the trading shine rather than kind of focusing on just pure combat. So, I'm investing in this space. I'm trying to help as many game designers as possible share that experience because I really do want to see this whole field take off. The other game that I'm looking at right now is also Arcade Land. So they're kind of building a home for players, kind of like a home and hub for players to both live in and play video games together on. And I hope, this is something that we can all share in the future of being able to play a game together. So I guess the take home here is, the summary of all this talk is that what I'm looking out for is kind of fun, innovative gameplay if it's kind of competing in this AAA space. If it is in the current crypto space, I'm looking for kind of deeper innovation on kind of the Axie formula and kind of bringing forth more flavor into that space. I'm also looking for this idea of trading as a core pillar, designing trading to be part of the core experience and to have systems in place so that players don't kill themselves just trading every day. It might be the case that, and there's actually a good talk in GDC about this on Game Developers Conference. There's a really good talk by the guys at Path and Exile and how they kind of tune their trading such that it works for them. And I would definitely encourage you guys, if you guys want to learn more, there's a lot of talks on Game Developers Conference that's extremely good at sharing some details here. Lastly, I'm also looking for strong teams that are able to prototype. I think, I'm not looking for teams that can deliver something that's amazing from the get-go. I'm looking for teams that can potentially, take a failure and, survive that. And to me, what doesn't really matter too much at this current point is this AAA graphics. I think that will come once we have some better formulas in this space. I think we're still very early in exploring this space. So, AAA graphics matter, but I don't think they're the most important thing here. Also, visual combat. I will say that visual combat is a little bit hard to do right now because the trading element needs to be core and pillar. And lastly, of course, esports. Esports too early doesn't make sense. You need to prototype a good game first. So hopefully from this talk, I've talked enough about kind of game design in detail. So hopefully, I think if there's anything to end on, it's let's kind of avoid, let's just add kind of NFTs to Fortnite. That's going to be amazing, guys. But rather to look at some systems in a lot more detail, avoid that sort of conversation, but go more into kind of how to innovate prototype gameplay and kind of grow this industry in a rapid prototype fashion. So guys, thank you guys so much for listening to that. I hope that was useful. And if it is, thank you. And hopefully I can join you guys in the next conference soon. So thank you guys.